So EMF meters, the discussion we just showed you a palette of EMF meters we have in front of us. Kind of go over some of the offerings that exist out there in the market, some of the differences, maybe an anecdote and an opinion in between. Probably what you're going to find the most common of any EMF meter amongst paranormal investigators out there is the K2. I've actually got two of them here. One's mine, one's a borrowed one. We've had these for years. The K2 is a single axis, which basically means the antenna, the accelerometer, is in only one direction, or unidirectional, generally coming from the sides. Most people kind of use it incorrectly, really with a single axis as opposed to a triple axis EMF meter. You kind of move it around a bit. That in itself, I mean, can cause readings. The K2 are certainly notorious in the way that they signal off. If there's one toy in the toolbox that's going to give you guaranteed results, it's the K2. And unfortunately, I've seen too many cases that are based off of that. So a small note to that being is we don't know, what electromagnetic frequency means really, other than measuring it in an electrical sense. We're assuming, as paranormal investigators, there has been said that EMF denotes that there's spirit there. Different devices measure EMF differently, but we don't know. We don't know. This is just a common theory, and that's fair enough. I think EMF, really should be more about when you're getting claims that somebody's feeling, wonky in a certain part of the house. EMF should be going, when you do base reads, to diagnose that area. Be that like an unsecured ballast in a fluorescent light, maybe in the basement where they feel freaky. Could be giving off that EMF rays, messing with the synaptic process in your mind, giving you those off feelings. I know that sometimes we use an EMF meter like a K2, which is just an easy visual if one's doing a solo. If it goes off, well, maybe it might be a reason to ask another question and or go around the room and see why the EMF is going up. But don't diagnose a case based on EMF, but that seems to be the common trend. So I've got a bunch of different ones here. Again, the K2, made by K2 Industries. Now K2 Industries makes a couple products, but three of them. The other two are, one's like a dog repelling device, and one is like a dog sonar. And then this, it's an unshielded device, which means a lot of things trigger it off. It's a single access device. It measures low intensity hertz. Most of these devices will go, let's say, between 30 and 20,000 hertz. So different frequencies. This hits with the lower stuff mostly, and measures 20 plus milligauss. That's pretty low range. I know pretty much as soon as you turn it on, it'll set itself up. Right now it's measuring in between 2.5. So I mean, it's not an accurate measurement, but we'll say it's 6 milligauss. I don't know, I'm sitting just outside my kitchen and I've got a living room next to me. It's got a bunch of electronic equipment, could be cycling off properly. But that's the K2. This is like it's like a baby diaper of EMF meters. It's cheap. You generally get it between 40 and 60 bucks. Everybody's got one. Everybody's got one. But it's a toy, really. But we will check and see how that gets signaled off later as well. All right. Second wise, one that I borrowed. I don't have a lot of experience with this particular one. This one's called a smart sensor. You can change your modes and all that. Some of them have nice features. Like this one's nice and small. I like this one. So if you were just going to do it basic, but again, it even says that the signals are on either side of here, so it is a single access. It measures in Tesla as well as milligauss, and temperature. That's pretty handy. Right now, it's it's not as sensitive, so the hertz probably not as low as the as the K2. So right now, I've got 0 milligauss on measurement. But again, we're going to go around and see what other things are affected by. This was created by Gary Galka. Gary Galka created this device called the Mel meter. It's had a few different models over the years, some including a K2 on it. antennas, does temperature as well. Some have lights. One of the things about the millimeter, it's created specifically for what we do. It is a single axis as well. So again, off the sides. I used to always say that if the millimeter was going off, then you got to check out something, because it's notoriously undramatic. But he had created this after his daughter had passed away in preparation to communicate. So, you know, and it'll measure, you know, your highs and your lows and your averages, and it's a good quality device. They're out of commission now, so to speak. I know that the millimeters used to be $250 online. Now I'm seeing them for around $89. So it's kind of come down in price. I'll turn this one on, and I'm guaranteeing you that this is not going to register a single thing here. Yep, it's got a nice backlight. I don't have the temperature probe in right now because it's not what's concerning me. Again, here it says 0 milligauss. Doesn't mean my battery is going to die pretty soon, so I'm going to shut that one off because I don't want to replace the battery. One thing about being a paranormal investigator is you don't have any money. This is the EDI Plus. It is a junior data collector. It collects, you know, 1 event per second. Most professional data collectors do about 100 events per second. So therefore, it's not necessarily cream of the crop with that, but it's good enough for what we do. It is also single access. To turn this on, you know, it'll give you all these great bits of information. Okay, temperature and whether the barometric pressure is going up and down. Temperature differential. There's a geophone on it as well, as you can see as I'm tapping. The EMF meter is here. It only measures up to 12 milligauss, which for an EMF meter is really low. It's okay if you put it into a static environment, I believe, into one particular place. It's not kind that you walk around with. It's more like if there's an event that happens in a static area and something comes around that area, you know, that's the kind of thing it is. It's almost like a tripwire or a motion sensor of some kind. But it's a data recorder, and it will put it on a SD card for you, which you can pull up on a graph. And the great thing about that is if you have that running for a couple days, you might see that there's a certain trend of things happening to where you might diagnose it. Cell phone. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. One of the things about a cell phone, and I couldn't really get, this is an iPhone 7, couldn't quite get a direct answer as to how many axes a program would hold. I couldn't find a lot of decent EMF meters on the App Store. I found one, but it measures Tesla, and Tesla and milligauss aren't really, it's not like you're going to convert back and forth, but it's still measurable. So I can measure with it just to see. I read anything from it having 3 axis to 6 axis to 12 axis, depending on what accelerometers are being used. I got to be honest with you, I'm not a cell phone app guy. I'm really not. Cell phones cause problems, they don't cure them as a rule. And finally, in the batch that we're going to be testing is the tri-field. Now this is a digital version of the other one that used to have a little needle that went across. This is not made for what we do, unlike really the other models we have here, which are made for paranormal detection. This is for, you know, an electrician or somebody of that type. This is 3 axis, right? So this is where you're going to get your clearest reading. This is definitely what I prefer to use for my base reads. I use that for a base read, and then, you know, if somebody's going to sit and do a solo, I chuck them up with the K2 just for the fact that it has a visual on it, that there's some kind of change. Now the millimeter and the tri-field and the smart sensor, generally speaking, it's 0 to 100 milligauss. So some things will cook it out, you know, some things will set them off. So one of the things I want to test now is what will actually trigger them. and then we'll go on and start seeing the differential on how they're measured in other items. All right, so what you see in front of you right now is a collection of a couple of EMF meters. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about the specifics of these EMF meters. We'll begin to do some tests to show what set these EMF meters off. We'll talk about the parameters that these EMF meters have, what their uses are. We're going to go around and measure some things and see the differential of it. And then we're going to do like an in-room demonstration on possible proper usage for a paranormal investigative team to be. And take it at that. Well, I just dropped the Panasonic 4K off the table on a tripod, but it looks like it's still working. Hopefully working. Okay, so we've got them all down right now, and as you can see, you know, the ones that are a little less sensitive versus more sensitive. I'm surprised actually that smart sensor is not reacting to too much. Same as the Mel, which isn't reacting to a whole lot, never does. Tri-field's sitting about 1 point, and both of the K2s seem to have leveled off to their green, which basically is their ambient, so nothing's really going off. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a couple different mediums in there and see if that triggers them off. You know, we can see that the K2s, they're just simply reacting to just electrical stuff around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my iPhone and I'm going to place my iPhone here, and I'm going to start by getting my wife to call me, see if that sets it off. Sandy's about 6 feet behind me. She knows you're there. Now let's hold up. We'll let that ring. As you can see, it's kind of like minorly affecting things, so that's okay. It's affecting the geophone on the EDI, plus more because, of course, the vibration of the phone. But the only thing it seems to be hitting are the K2s as a rule. As you can see, the K2s are going up a bit when that happens. Okay, so now, Sandy, can you... I'll move that down here, see if that makes any kind of difference. Can you send me a text? Sometimes it takes the K2s a little bit to calm down. No, it didn't seem to affect things a whole lot. That's good. It could be like older phones versus newer phones, because I know the old phones used to set things off like crazy. They're all pretty moderate at this point in time. Now try sending you a Facebook message. See if like data. Okay, so data, as you can see, that did set off the EDI. Another one spiked a little bit. Not a lot of drama to it. Okay, so phones certainly can affect it, certainly different phones, I suppose. Now what we're going to do is we're going to try the house line. I'm going to try my house phone. Just having it near it obviously is powered, so that one... Okay. Alright, so it isn't necessarily affecting things all that much. Now, this is going to come across funny. I remember doing a tour of a haunted place, and the lady had a audio device on her around her belt, and she would speak through the microphone, and all the EMF meters would go off. And she would thank Spirit. So, just creating a transmission. Hello, hello. Can you speak me? Hello, hello. As you can see, we'll set certain things off. See, now the smart sensor is going off. All right, the K2s, right off the charts. And the Mel, well, the Mel is currently dead, so we're not going to worry about that measurement. Going to speak to that, I'm going to open up the app on the cell phone, which measures in units of Tesla. And I want to see how that gets affected. You can see, can you see right there what that is? So right now it says it's a 47. So, does that go off as far as Tesla? Nope. But like even the tri-field's jumping from 1.5 to 3.6. You know, the blue one there is going up to 20. But the units Tesla isn't being affected on the cell phone, which is good. But it's suffice it to say that simple things can set off an EMF detector. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go around and measure certain things with these devices and see how they get set off by it and what the differential is. Okay, so we're going to just find a selection of things just here. I'm going to start with the EMF detector, which is actually units Tesla. Right now in the room, you know, like a mid-range baseline, it's hitting about 48, okay? If I take that over to like a light switch, say it's 158 units Tesla, you could do the conversion at home to an outlet. It's down to 24, 39, you know, back to the mid-range of the room. The tri-field, which is mid-range at about 3.3 milligauss base. Taking it to a light switch, it's lower. It's the same, so it's not a dramatic unit that the tri-field will give off. I'm guessing that the Mel, sorry, again, remember that where the axis is, it's really nothing. So not a heavy differential going on. Now the K2. K2 is also flat. So we're starting off with something that's general, and when you do a base read of a house, it's one of the things you might want to check is the outlets, because sometimes outlets are can be the cause if they're not grounded properly. Here it seems to be okay. We're safe. Again, I'm moving it around it because of where the access is, and it's not registering. So it's a good base to start with over here. And we'll move to something a little bit more dramatic. See, there's your baseline. Nothing. So let's take it over to an electric fireplace. Okay, so right now, this one actually does read higher than most. It's cycling. Now there's a word proper for it. You know, we've used a few words for it. Cyclomatic in all kinds of ways. Pulsatronic. And you know, it's going anything from 21 milligauss to 190 milligauss. Now we're going to move on to the cell phone, which was mid-range at 49. Yeah, I know if you can't see the screen, it's losing its mind as to where it wants to be as far as units of Tesla. Now, one of the things, being an investigator, you've kind of got to be honest with yourself. I'm not necessarily sure if this is the meter I would use, probably because I don't really use Tesla. Maybe an actual scientist might, but I don't. So therefore, it's often why when we speak about data collection, there are teams that use a lot of data collection, but some teams, like we work on a more pragmatic scale, and Not necessarily sure how much of that data in particular we're going to be able to use to surmise the case. Okay, so I'm right now in, middle of the room, sitting about 7. As I get close to this, completely off the charts, but that stops at 20. We know now that it's cycling. We'll try the MEL. Remember, the MEL is the most undramatic one. I honestly don't know why anybody uses a MEL, because you're never going to get reaction. Now the MEL is reading 128, 25, 35, 43, 98, and then it flatlines, which means it's gone over the 200 mark. The tri-field, there you go. As soon as you take it over there, because it's reading all over, it's a triple access, right? As I pull away, like say I'm right here, this 50 milligauss right here, as I get close to it, it flatlines. So some of them are a bit more sensitive, and some can only measure up to a certain extent. I'd probably say this might be the highest EMF in the house. But see, now that doesn't chart right off. That stops at 7.5 milligauss. No, now it's beeping that it's going over. So again, remember, it's cycling. Click. Okay, so now we've got two things in a corner over here that can be seen. Pretty much everybody has. Everybody's got a computer router, and the EDI right off the bat. The EDI only measures up whatever, but when I talk about pulsatronic, which is just, I think, a term I coined, routers, as stuff comes in by the internet, constantly be changing. So there it's going between the 5 and 12 milligauss, and I'd have to possibly look further into what the actual paradigms are of those, because to me, only measuring up to 12 milligauss doesn't seem to make sense to me, but that's just me. Taking the K2 meter, remember this is like the most sensitive hypermeter in the world. Okay, it's redlining. And, as you can see, it's pulsing, right? It's maybe the one meter that actually shows how dramatic a router can be. Because, as information comes. Now the millimeter, this is the most undramatic of all. It's measuring 1.7 milligauss to 2.1 to 8.7, 9.0, 9.6, 10.4, 14.1 now, 11.8. So it could be a good judge of actually what it is, but to see that there's a heavy differential there, it's not a dramatic meter, especially the fact that it's a single axis style. But it's a fair EMF meter for what it is that we do, and it's backlit, so there's good quality to it. The tri-field, okay, so this is the 3-axis. You know what? 12, 10. The one's saying it's over 20. The K2 is saying it's over 20 milligauss. Okay. The EDI is stating pretty much max. But this one and the millimeter seem to be somewhat more in agreement. This one's a little tonerier. It's ranging between 12 and 33, back down to 9. It's sort of acceptable considering that it's pulsing. And then the smart sensor, which is running 7, 8, 10, 14, 15 milligauss, 8.5 back to 5. So at this point in time, there's consistency in its bursts, but when you start seeing the actual readings themselves, the MEL and this smart sensor, which I'm going to have to look up where to buy this, where it's made from, are at least somewhat consistent, not overly dramatic, and seem to be more in line with what the tri-field is saying. I mean, you might come over here and you're going to see a fish tank. And fish tanks are notorious, I can tell you. We've investigated many houses. You know, that one there, 13, 22, 25, 26. Again, remember as the pump kind of generates, you know, as it's pumping, it's going to give off different stuff. And as you hold the EMF meter there, it's going to stabilize, right? And it seems to be stabilizing around 25, but 25 milligauss to 30, you know. If I take the meter over there, I do expect it might take a couple minutes to jag up. Sitting about 28, fairly stable. And that's a good sign. That's a good sign. If I take over the K2, well, it's just red. It's gone over the capacity of what it can read. You know, it's gone over 20. That's as high as it can read. So therefore to me, then that's not a fantastic device for base reads, right? Because it can only exceed a certain amount. Its capacity is only 20 some odd milligauss. More a responsive tool, and I do see people doing base reads with K2. We have in the past, you know, like every other team, we have to learn too. Everybody has to learn. It's okay. Take the ego away. Take the ego away and say, damn, I was doing that wrong for this long time, now I'm going to do it right. Or closer to being right anyway. I used Tri-Field there, I used Tri-Field, and now EDI. Okay, so the EDI, again, should, well, it'll shut right off. But it's metering right out. Geo's phone's going off because of the pump, and it's all vibrating and whatever. But again, remember this only goes up to 12. So, you know, an EDI, which is a data collector, is kind of like saying, you know, over periods of time there were small bursts or continuations of accelerated EMF. It's not like going up to something, you wouldn't base read with this and go up to a hydro panel, because you know that would be high. You would put this in an area of low traffic or wherever claims would be, and then see the trend that, yeah, in that area that there's increased volume. All right, so now down in the basement with the panel box. This is where a lot of the times, this is when you go to do base reads of a home, you're going to go down to the basement. That's one of the major places, because you're going to want to see. In the basement, people seem to have this, I'm creeped out when I'm down here. Well, there could be all kinds of reasons for that. This could be one of them. Not saying it is the reason, but it could be. I know I get near the panel box, and you know it's giving me readings on this smart sensor between 32. I'm going to use the center of the panel box, okay? 19. It did go up as high as 65. Certainly requires on how close I get to it. Like I'll touch it, and I'm getting 80. Okay. I'm going to take the K2 in there, and I'll touch it, and of course the K2 is going to peak off, right? Right at red. So if you're doing base reads with a K2, well, there's going to be 10 or 15 things in the house that are going to make this go right off the deep charts. But don't get me wrong, if I lay there with my head next to a panel box all day long, I'm probably going to suffer some form of mental fatigue and some kind of reaction. I don't know if we're actually going to test that in the future. With my wife, maybe I'll have her come sleep on the panel box for a couple days and see if she goes insane.
No, that's all you, baby. I wouldn't dare take your thunder.
It's kind of you. Again, EDI, right off the charts. So again, not a device you're going to put that through. Now what I want to see, of course, are does the Tri-Field and the Mel meter reach that 80? See, the Mel's funny, and the Mel kind of coasts up. Like it's not like something that's going to change in 1 second. So it's stopping around 60, 62-ish, right? So it's got a bit of a differential. And now the Tri-Field. Now the Tri-Field is going to be the most accurate measurement. And it's saying about 62. Okay, so isn't that interesting? So like when it comes down to that, of course, the most expensive device you know, is the tri-field. I mean, this runs about $325. You know, you're going to say that this one here is about 100 to 200 bucks, but it's made for what we do. And I would say in our community, it's probably one of the higher ended devices specifically for paranormal. EDI is also about that much, but again, it's got a limited capacity, a limited threshold. The K2 has got a limited threshold as to how far it can go and measure. Again, this is more of a responsive EMF meter, like you know, some kind of alarm or signal rather than a logistical measurement. This smart sensor, I wasn't too disappointed with. It's good, it's solid state, and it's got temperature in it as well, but it was a lot more sensitive in giving a higher reading. So hard to call. I gotta say, I'm kind of the most impressed, if you're talking about single axis, more impressed with the Mel, which is generally an undramatic, but it takes its time to level up. So a bit of advice when you're using a Mel meter, keep it there for a bit of time. Don't just go up and take a read and then walk away from it. You know, maybe take a few seconds and get that read, whether some of the other ones are a bit more on the sensitive. So let's go back upstairs and let's talk about how to base read a room. Okay, so I'm on an investigation now. It's my living room. Yeah, there's coffee cups and cigarette butts and everything all over the place, whatever. So the client didn't clean up. First thing you want to do is give him hell for that. So now you're doing your base reads. So you're going to walk around the house and get your base reading of the house. Some people walk into a room. Some people scan all the walls. You kind of got to do a bit of each, but you're getting your base. Like right now, the base in the middle of this room is 0.0 milligauss. That's on that device. Just for argument's sake, I'm going to take the tri-field as well, okay? The tri-field, which is a 3-axis device, is giving about 1.5 milligauss in the middle of the room. Could that be a matter of the axis? It's possible. So now I've got to go around the room and I've got to think about things that's going to cause equipment to go up or down, right? So in case I have the K2 and the K2 blips off, I can change. So I walk around the room. Okay, this isn't on right now, but this is plugged in. You know what? 1.9, it's not crazy. I would want to record these sort of things. Go to electrical light devices, the center of the room, go to midpoints in the room, 2 points there. You know, I might walk over to the light switch. Maybe it's insecure. 2.8, not all that crazy. If that was a fluorescent light, I'd be worried about it. Oh, there's a dog walking around the room. Yeah, he's 1.5 to 2.5. And then as I'm doing a base read in this room, I'm going to notice I've got a couple of ports here. We saw these earlier, right? Okay, let's measure that. So I'm getting a 22 and a 27. Right, so we know that this is a source of high EMF. Going over to the router, and you should do this in every home, they're almost reading parallel. This one's a little higher, 7 to 6, you know, but we know now that that's what things give off. So now that I've done a reading in the room, honestly, after the base reading of the house, and to know where the expansive sources of electrical contamination are, and possible reasons why somebody's got some synaptic activity, your job is done when it comes to these things. Then you take other devices that might measure impulses at the spot, but don't put a lot of money into that. Don't put a lot of base into it, because EMF honestly hasn't proven a single thing, and it's not a cause or a case for any validation of paranormal activity. It's just one more thing in the tool bag to maybe add to the data on a case. So that's it, pretty simple. Wanted to kind of go over the differences. As you can see, a couple of them have wide variances. It's not so much of the variances. And here, I'll see if I'm now doing my base reads. And I think I'm going to get a call on my hello. Okay, see, those didn't go off. But now I'm doing base reads with a K2 meter. Okay, so I'm looking around. Sandy.
Hello.
Call me.
Hello.
Not receiving, but now that I'm near the transmission, Sandy. So you can see that just making a transmission over a radio, which a lot of paranormal investigators use, will set a simple device like this off. That's why we don't do base readings with these, and that's why, you know, if I'm on an investigation and my K2 went off, my K2 is going off. It's largely because of the transmissions that you're getting off. Okay, so I think one of the things we need to think about is knowing the roles of certain devices and not overvaluing what they actually bring to a case, but more the conglomerated congruent of it all together and how it can develop what the case is. Remember, what we do is an unrefined science, and we don't have proof yet of anything. All we're doing is stumbling, and hopefully we come across something that is going to prove it to us one day, but it won't be EMF that makes it happen. So that was really simple, pragmatic video on EMF, just showing you that there are variances on all kinds of devices and the limits of others. All right, thanks.